I'd like to talk to you about how the church relates to the culture. And this is increasingly a problem in the Western world, because we have something that the rest of the world doesn't have, and that is we have a post-Christian culture. We have got a culture which is becoming more and more, you might say, anti-Christian. Let me give you 4 phrases, 3 wrong, 1 I hope right. Defensive against, wrong. Purity from, wrong. Relevant to, wrong. Faithful presence within. Defensive against is an attitude that largely through politics, we need to take back the culture by essentially taking Christian values, Christian concepts, and making sure the law upholds them. The defensive against mindset thinks that politics leads, that culture flows from politics. And what I'm trying to say is that politics is downstream from cultural change. Where does the change come from? The change comes from, I think, deeper places, which actually has to do with writing and the academy and the intellectual stuff, the philosophy. It also comes from the art world. It comes from the popular. It comes from film. It comes from a lot of different things, including, by the way, the decline of the churches. Purity from are people who say Christians shouldn't have anything to do with trying to reform society in any way at all. You've also got just the old-fashioned conservative evangelical pietism that says our job is to evangelize souls and to disciple people, and we really, as Christians, we shouldn't have anything to do with the world because everything in the world is going to burn up except souls, so let's win souls and that's it. Relevant to is always been the problem of the part of the church that says we're out of it, we're just out of step. You know, modern scholarship, modern thought, we're out of it, we've got to get updated. We need to make sure our music and our message and the way we dress and the places we are really culturally relevant. Now, unfortunately, sometimes that means hip. Now, the last one is faithful presence within. Look carefully. Look at the word, first of all, presence. There's a difference between being present in the culture and trying to take it over or trying to be absent from it. Presence means we are willing and able to take our people into, we're not keeping them out of the financial world, we're not keeping them out of the art world, we're not keeping them out of the academic world. We're not keeping them out of TV and movies. We're not keeping them out of cities, difficult places to live. We're going to be all those places. We're going to be there. But we're just going to be there and serve. See, instead of saying we're going to take back the culture, what I really would say is, my goodness, make sure that 20 or 30% of your churches, going back to saying, I don't want all the churches in the city, but if you find that you've got 2% of your churches in the big city, put 20 or 30% in the big city and just encourage people to be there and to be in all the parts of the city, to be serving the poor in such a radical way. I mean, this actually happened once. I once heard somebody, a non-Christian, say that church is doing so much for our neighborhood that even though I don't believe what they believe, I'd hate to see them leave because if the church left, we'd probably have to raise taxes. Now, even though that person says, I don't believe what they believe, I'll tell you something. There's a person who, if you're the preacher or you're a pastor, or you're a member of that church and you want to talk to them about the gospel, that guy will give you the time of day. He will listen to you. Why? Because you're present. You're there. You're not just meeting in the neighborhood, you're in the neighborhood. But that also means that you'd have a fair number of Christians in the media, which we don't have. That you'd have a fair number of Christians in movie making, You know, you'd have a fair number in the art world, not just in the neighborhoods helping the poor. You just be there. If you seek power rather than service, you'll never get power, nor will you serve. But if you seek service rather than power, people will offer you the power. They'll ask for your opinion. They'll seek they'll give you influence. So faithful presence within. Oh, faithful. What's faithful? Well, faithful is pretty important, and that is the danger of getting involved in cities and the danger of getting involved in cultural institutions is that instead of you changing them, they change you. Let me look at another word, and that is within. Rather than creating all of your and Christians do this, instead of creating all parallel Christian institutions, be willing to, as much as possible, get into the schools, get into the institutions with Christians, and support the Christians there. Now, how do you do that? This is where your churches have got to become better and better, and so does my church, at helping people integrate their faith with their work. And the trouble with doing what I'm telling you is it's tough for people not to start to suck up to people, suck up to the culture, want to be accepted, and start to compromise biblically. You have got to find ways of training your people to integrate their faith with their work, how to shape the way in which they work by their faith in the gospel. And that's going to be part of your discipleship program. There's got to be a way of discipling people to stay within the culture and not to withdraw from the culture and to come into your church. We're pioneering a couple of things. One of them is called Gotham Fellows, and Gotham Fellows is a post-university, one-year boot camp for thinking out what it means to be a Christian in your field. You get a lot of reading, a lot of theological study. You get a mentor in your field. So if you're a dancer, you get a Christian dancer. If you're a lawyer, you get a Christian law partner. If you're a financial person, you get a Christian person in the financial world. We have vocational fellowships, which means we get people together in their vocation, and we really encourage them to develop relationships and find ways of encouraging each other. You know, it means we will get musicians together, we will get artists, visual artists together, we'll get financial people together, business leaders together, marketing and promotion and advertising people together. I mean, we even have a composers fellowship. Let me confess something. I was trained to disciple people, but the only way I know how to disciple lay people is by increasingly pulling them out of their world into my church. So, I mean, in the early days of Redeemer, when we would win actors to Christ and businessmen to Christ, they would come and ask me questions like, well, what's the what's the biblical view of short selling? And, first of all, my attitude was exactly what almost all of you are saying, and that is, what's short selling? Or an actor would come and say, what do you think of method acting? I said, well, what's method acting? Well, see, in method acting, when you have a part that it requires you to be angry, you don't act angry, you actually get angry. What do you think of method acting? And I say, well, that doesn't sound good. Well, he says, is that right for a Christian? And what kind of roles can I take? I mean, what kind of stories can I be involved in and tell? I don't know. I want to teach you how to lead a Bible study and eventually become an elder. I want to take you away from all that. Well, does that really fit, with what the Bible says about what God said to Adam and Eve? Go out there and make a culture that honors and glorifies God? You know what? If there's no Christians writing books, making movies and television shows, after a while, people aren't even going to be able to understand me when I talk to them about the gospel, because they won't actually have the concepts. They won't have the furniture. The culture will be so apart that I'm going to have to give people a week of training just before they can even understand a gospel presentation. Secularism tends to make people selfish. And religiosity and moralism tends to make people tribal. But if we can show, here we go back to the 3 ways to live, if we can show that what Christianity does is it turns people into servants, fearless servants, people who are not afraid of the city, not afraid of the culture shaping spaces, not afraid of these places, deeply present within, and with a heart to serve.
This whole thing about being present in the city.
Yeah.
We find it's really difficult to keep families in the city. Because, like you said earlier, that there's a lot of single people.
I mentioned that, right?
Then they get married and then they go to the suburbs.
Yeah. It really isn't. What you need to do is you need to give them positive examples of people who've done it. So you need to go to some people who are committed to staying in the city and raising their family in the city. Now, we all know that people who make a lot of money can live here without a problem. But the average person who's not making a lot of money will find it very, very difficult. But it costs $123,000 a year in Manhattan to purchase the same lifestyle as costs $50,000 in Houston. What you have to do is you have to find some people in the city who are committed to doing it, but they don't know how, and you work with them to try to be creative. So it's really probably more a matter of effort and will than just money. In other words, if you have some ingenuity, if you can find some other folks to do it, you can stay too. We've found that the most important thing is just to stay put yourself. In other words, as a pastoral family, we just found if we stay put and we don't move and we make friends and people want to stay in the city because they have such good friends. Just loving people and they don't want to lose the fellowship they've got. See, if you're just a great Bible teaching church, but you're not an incredibly warm fellowship, you're not going to keep people in the city.